Hey Jeff,
Hey, Jody. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. We're streaming live already, like I had indicated. Is this time going to work out for you?
Oh yeah, this is fun.
Okay. Hey, you moved your picture.
Well, I moved the camera, the laptop, trying to get a little more light. It's not the best office for natural lighting for sure.
Yeah, no, that actually looks pretty good. If let's see here. We'll if you can tilt the camera down a little bit, that'll give you a little less headroom. That's perfect. That's perfect. Yep, even good. Great. Well, what is it? I have probably 1:59 your time,
That's right.
so we're pretty much on target. Anybody that's listening to this is seeing, they're hearing us, but they're not seeing us yet. They're seeing a please stand by message that is being broadcast out live to YouTube. And so if they're hearing this, they know that we're here. But we're hiding our beautiful faces until the right time. You
Guess
also
we hide our faces the whole time. So
that would be called radio.
right, right.
Um, if you have another, if you wanted to follow along in the chat room, you're more than welcome to do that too, either just watching or logging in. Either way, you can do that by going to yamplify.tv/live, and you'll see the chat room there to the right-hand side of the little screen. You can click in the upper right-hand corner of that box, and it'll blow up the and separate the chat box on its own. So then you could make it, for me with my bad eyes, I can make it full screen and bigger so I can see it. So you probably don't want to follow the video along the streaming because it's always about 30 seconds delayed. So
Yeah,
that'll be real confusing if you're listening live and listening to the video stream at the same time. Uh, Only for you and for me is it confusing. The people that are listening to the YouTube stream, uh, that's as live as it gets for them.
right.
So that's how that works. We've got
And
kind
so
of a
can I follow along with the chat and still be in Google Hangouts at the same time?
yes, sir. You can
Okay.
just be sure to open up a new tab or open up a different browser. Um,
Okay.
I've actually opened up a different machine, but yeah, either one of those. You just don't want to close out the you don't want to close out the chat window, otherwise that'll cut you off.
Right. I hear you.
So if there's anybody that's tuned in, you've tuned in to Triangulation. You're hearing the pre-show. We're just getting set up here, and we're going to get ready to start up in just a couple minutes. So hang tight. I'd play some music, but then YouTube would probably issue a takedown because I'm sure it would be in violation of something. So,
Something, of course.
and I'd sing, but I can't. So have you did you manage to get the chat box session up?
Yeah, I've got it up in the
Okay.
right-hand corner of the screen.
Okay. So I'll just make sure. I'll just say howdy. Oops, if I could type. You see that?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. I'm undefined according to that. I don't
Aren't we all?
know what. Well, all right then. Um, I'm ready if you are.
Yep. You just say the word.
All right. Let me switch over to the live view. I'll introduce the show and then I'll introduce you. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
In three, two, one. Well, it's time for triangulation. cause-driven conversations where we talk with leaders and experts around the planet, quite honestly. And with me today, I have a friend and a colleague, a former colleague from and a longtime Y guy, Jody Jernigan with the YMCA of the Chesapeake. Did I get that right, Jody?
Sure did.
Excellent. Well, Jody, thank you for being here today, and I'm looking forward to having just a conversation here. And so we'll start out. We'll just jump right in. Let me know and let the folks know just a little bit about your professional background and some of the things of where you started, how you started, and why are you still doing what you're doing, and why did you land in the YMCA of the Chesapeake in Easton, Maryland?
Right. Well, Jeff, thanks for having me. And that one question could take up the entire hour, likely.
That's okay.
18 years, and it's been a long, arduous journey. So I actually got my start at the YMCA of Wilmington in North Carolina back in 1996. So quite a long time ago. I got started at 96 as a staff person, 94 or 5 as a volunteer at that same YMCA. My roommate at the time, one of them, was actually coaching a 5-year-old soccer team, and I wasn't able to make one Saturday and asked me to fill in for him. And so I dragged along another roommate of mine, and we went up to the Y and coached the game, and we ended up coaching for the next 3 seasons and getting to know the Y, and that was really my first experience or taste of the YMCA. And so I coached that same team throughout the next few seasons and got to know the staff. And in 96, the exec came out. Her name is Perry Maxwell. Came out and said, we'd love for you to come on staff. And what do you think about that? And we're hiring for summer camp staff, counselors, and after-school counselors. And so I thought about it, decided to interview, and got the job. And worked my first summer and swore I'd never go back ever again to the Y.
And why is that at the time? Do you remember?
So I do, actually. So I was a camp counselor at YMCA Camp Seaweed, was the name of the camp, of all things. It was basically a funeral tent pitched in the middle of a field, and that was the I guess the summary of that camp experience was. That's the space that we had, and we managed to average around 120 kids a day, and they all had fun, and the counselors survived. But it was hot, it was rainy, it was messy, and my first experience, just didn't think that's what I ever wanted to do. But lo and behold, I went back again the following summer after working after school and haven't left since. So that's the start of my career right there.
Wow, that's amazing, actually. So I'm imagining this Camp Seaweed, and it was in North Carolina as well?
Correct, in Wilmington, uh-huh.
And I'm not an expert on North Carolina weather in summer, but I'm imagining not only hot, but probably humid.
Humid, absolutely, and lots of rain that summer. It was one of our wettest summers at that point in time. Quite a few hurricanes rolled through that summer as well. But the kids had a great time. We managed to keep it upbeat and positive and creative, and that's what camp is all about.
Well, that's amazing. Actually, it reminds me that it's, what do they call that? So from the beginning of the story, it's kind of like a gateway drug. Is the volunteering, sports volunteer? You got stuck. You got called. A friend calls you, and boom. That's your one taste, and here it is, 18 years later.
That's right. So, that little bit of a taste of the Y Kool-Aid, I guess you call it, turned into, year-round work with after school, and then leading that same camp morphed into an environmental education camp under a different name with better facilities, and into a youth coordinator position, still running camp and after school, and leaders in training programs, a few teen programs here and there, and in '99, I landed my first full-time exempt position as program director at the Stanton Augusta YMCA in Stanton, Virginia. So left Wilmington behind and moved to Virginia and ran every program that Y had was my responsibility. And so it was a great experience to jump into some other areas I wasn't used to, but still had camp and after school as part of my responsibility. Um, Got to know a beautiful new area, a Y undergoing capital campaign and construction renovation. So a little Y in a small area growing exponentially. And that Y has continued to do that and still to this day. So it's really pretty neat to keep a check on the pulse of things in Stanton.
So one of the things that a lot of people may not understand if they're not familiar with the way that the YMCA works, at least here in the United States, is that you were in Wilmington, North Carolina, and then you end up with your first full-time exempt position in Stanton, Virginia. So
That's right.
so how do you find out? I mean, if you're just an upstart program director as you were there, and obviously part-time, or I shouldn't say part-time, but
Hourly.
hourly, right, exactly. Um, how'd you find out about that opportunity, and why, and how, why Stanton? Because it doesn't sound like you're from Stanton or anything
No,
like that.
not at all. Well, it was interesting. In Wilmington, I had reached a point that I couldn't progress any further. So I had a decision to make. It's probably the first of many career molding decisions I've had in my 18 years with the Y. It was stay in Wilmington, find a job outside of the Y. It was stay hourly without benefits, but continuing to work for the Y in Wilmington. And as a college graduate, that was a little bit, difficult to swallow. Or branch out. And how you branched out at that time, this was the day and age when the vacancy list got printed on paper at the Y or got mailed to us, and every 2 weeks I think it was posted on the bulletin board by the copier in Wilmington, and you would take it down and browse through it, and if something caught your eye or you felt like you were qualified for something, then you mailed off your resume, you learned a little bit about the position through a few phone calls, and you go out and you win the job, and that's exactly what I did for that particular position. And it meant leaving North Carolina, which at the time I had lived my entire life,
Hmm.
but it meant pursuing a career that I was extremely and still am very passionate about, working for an organization that I cared very deeply for at that point in time and still do.
So that was I remember those days a little bit with the national vacancy list. So there
That's
is
right.
a national vacancy list. There still is one. It's digital now, of course. And so kind of the United States is I was going to say the world is your oyster, and that's true to a certain extent, but that vacancy list only covers the United States, but it's still a very excellent way for staff who feel like you felt you had kind of hit the ceiling.
That's right.
And so you said, hey, this Y stuff is in my blood. I think I want to keep doing it, but I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing. And so you land an exempt position. You started with your benefits package.
That's right.
And that benefits package also, I know the rules were different, but that benefits package, again, for young staff thinking about what it is involved in a career, there's a retirement package. And when you're 18 or 19 or 20, in your young 20s, you are not thinking about retirement. And that's exactly the time that you should be planning for retirement, because that's what makes it work. And so you began to enjoy those benefits as well.
Absolutely.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and I still look at the vacancy list now. Not that I'm looking for a job, but I have, several young staff out there who I've met during my time helping, assisting, facilitating the Executive Preparatory Institute, and just other people I run across in my various activities with the Y. That I'm on the lookout for them as well. Some of them are looking to engage in a deeper type of role in the Y, and so I constantly browse it, and it's a great way to, just kind of touch base with what's going on out there in the U.S. and what's going on in the movement. And it's neat to see the new roles and types of positions they're posted and how they're written, and learning about them individually for sure.
So you land this exempt job in Stanton, Virginia, and now I'm talking to you in YMCA of the Chesapeake. So let's pick up the Jody Jernigan story from Stanton, Virginia, and you're a program director, kind of the Uber director over all the programs.
That's right.
And then what happens next?
So at the time, I was actually engaged to be married.
Ah,
Wife. She was still in school in Wilmington. That's where we met. We actually met at the Y in Wilmington. She ran one camp, and I was working with the other. And so I got to a point where I knew if I wanted to actually get married, I probably needed to move back and help her plan the wedding, get graduated from University of Wilmington or the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and then move into the wedding itself that August of 2001. So I made the decision to leave that position in Stanton. I went back to Wilmington, went back to the Y there, created my own job for the period of time I was there. I was lucky enough that they thought it was a great idea for me to come in and help evaluate and qualify after school and camp programs and start or kind of lead the leaders in training program for that summer. So that's what I did, and it was a decision, a very personal, deeply personal position to leave a position which I really enjoyed behind, but it was the right decision for me personally. And so that August of 2001, we got married, went on a weeks-long honeymoon, came back, packed up our lives, and moved to Houston, Texas. And that's where our paths crossed, you and I. And so we moved to Houston and started as program director and then senior program director at one of their facilities. And ended up spending 7 years there and got my first executive director role of a non-facility under capital campaign, the final steps of that campaign, and then full construction of a $7.5 million facility. So again, it was a unique opportunity for me as a young executive at the time, 29, and getting to go through those processes of the capital campaign, which was really my first taste of being heavily involved with it, not just as a program director on the sidelines. But then going through construction and the grand opening of a facility and learning how to live within its walls and how the community would embrace it and did embrace it. So my time in Houston, I learned just more information and more processes in 7 years than I have probably the other 11 I've spent with the Y.
so it sounds like you spent about a year then in Wilmington again, and then you launched out to Houston and continued in the program space. But yeah, when our paths crossed, I have only ever known you as an executive director of a facility. Right. So
that's right.
This is a series of stepping stones then that you.
That's right. I'm probably your typical. Or maybe I am a typical kind of person in a leadership level position that really worked through the paces of the Y and got to know it in and out, every program and service that the Y's offered, and learning how to be a leader to staff, and then how to be a leader to a larger number of staff, and eventually getting my first shot as an executive director in an association like Houston is a pretty significant thing. It's not an opportunity afforded to a lot of people, but I feel very blessed that it was afforded to me, and I took the bull by the horns and went after it, and had a great experience opening a facility that was very successful after the grand opening. And my time in Houston, I still look back at it fondly and think of all the things that I've done since then, and that I probably wouldn't have been given that opportunity had I not had my time in Houston.
So that's like a perfect segue. It's as if we'd scripted this almost.
Almost.
So you had, it sounds like maybe you had your first taste of real financial development work around that particular branch
Right.
in Houston, which
Mhm.
then maybe that sort of persuaded you to focus on that area because that's where you are, that's the position that you're in today, right?
It is. And, so 16 years of really solely operational work, which includes programming, leading a branch. I was able to leave Houston and accept a chief executive officer role with the YMCA in Virginia. And we'll come back to that story because that's a story I really enjoy telling because I think it needs to be heard. And then, going to Columbia, South Carolina as a district executive, and then as like a vice president role for program development and marketing and some other things as well. So I really took 16 years of operational experience and just kind of tossed it to the wayside when I moved to the YMCA of the Chesapeake. And development it's a part of everyone who works at the Y has a piece of development. Every staff person has their hand on the development ball, whether they know it or not, whether they are told that or not, and whether they're held responsible to that or not. A successful development um, model or department within an association or a single branch is relying upon all the staff involved. So it's always been a part of my being. It's always been a part of my job, whether I was an executive director or CEO or whatever, a program director as well. But I decided, I have an opportunity to become a development officer at a really progressive YMCA, doing great things, growing well beyond its boundaries given the small area that we're in. And I decided that it's a great fit, and I kind of took a leap of faith. And if you heard Malcolm Gladwell talk at General Assembly, he says it takes around 10,000 hours to be an expert in anything.
Yep.
And so I basically had tossed my 10,000 hours out the door, and it started from scratch again, really. So it's been an interesting journey. It's been a fun journey, and it's actually a journey that's just taken another step. And I guess today's the 13th, so in 17 days, I'm actually moving into a COO role, and moving out of the development world, not because I don't like it or didn't like it or wasn't good at it, but what we are currently undergoing with 3 capital campaigns. We'll have 7 Strong Kids campaigns plus a fairly large and aggressive endowment campaign. I knew that just 2 years into development, it was probably well beyond my scope of knowledge, and we probably didn't have time for me to learn because it's happening now. We have to strike while the iron is hot in a lot of those, and so I felt like it was the right thing for me as having an opportunity to move into an operations role to do that and to bring someone into the development role for us who can do all the things that I was going to have a bit of a learning curve with. So, if anybody ever wants to hear a journey that just continues to be a journey, I'm certainly the case study for that.
Well, that's actually really exciting, I think, and I'm learning some things here as well, since you and I haven't really touched base for 5 or 6 years since we both respectively went our separate ways in the
Right.
movement, and so that's super exciting. Let's circle on back to that CEO slot that you want to talk about because it sounded like that's a real passionate topic for you, and that's what triangulation is all about. It's about passionate people with passionate topics and sharing that message. So let's zip back to there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as a young program director, and I'm going to preface this part of the conversation with I can tag myself at that point in time to be, I was probably overly confident, maybe bordering on cocky at the time. And, I'm fully aware of that. I embrace that. I wore it well at the time. But I'm older now, more mature. I've learned from those that time for sure. And so, moving into, way back when I knew that I was going to make the Y career, I set very structured, inflexible professional goals on myself.
Hmm.
And so I said, well, Jody, if you're going to do this by the age of 30, you're going to be an executive director. And by 35, you want to be a CEO. So I held myself to those very strict boundaries um, for a long period of time in my Y career. And so, like I said earlier, at the age of 29, I got my first executive director role in Houston. So I thought, hey, here I am. I'm on the right track. Um, I opened a Y, ran it for a period of time, and said, well, it's time for me to move on to my next goal, which I did. I, went after a CEO job very aggressively in a small town in Virginia called Tazewell. It actually sits in a county that's right on the state line with West Virginia.
Hmm.
So it's a fairly small area.
Hmm.
It was a construction project without a Y charter. It was a board of a hospital who had decided to build a wellness center in town, and they wanted it to be a Y because some of them had Y experience as a child.
Hmm.
So I felt, this is something that I can really sink my teeth into. I've been through the capital process. I've been through construction. I've opened a facility. So this is right, right up my alley. And so accepted the role after it was offered to me. Uh, moved myself there first, and then my family there a couple months later, as my wife finished up a school contract back in Houston. And so I had done it. I had hit my goal, and that's for me at that time was what it was all about. And um, flash forward 8 months, and I was resigning from that same position. And so let's talk about the middle part there is, and this is really what I want to share with people and what I've learned. And I do share this with young staff whenever I get the chance or the opportunity. Is I came into that situation that I'm the expert.
Hmm.
I'm the Y guy. I know what needs to happen. I know the direction we need to go. And I wasn't very good at engaging volunteers
Ooh.
in the process. And I know that's a mistake. And I probably knew it at the time, but I was very bullheaded, and I, said, well, I can get the charter, which I did, and I can start selling memberships, which we did, and we can get programs started, which we were working on. But I did a really poor job of engaging with the board members, the volunteers at that time, communicating with them, um, and just overall the sense of I hear that you as a volunteer have feedback for me, but I don't accept it because you don't know what a Y is. And I never said that out loud, obviously, but that's really my mentality at the time. Um, and so, some other things happen. I take a lot of the responsibility, but certainly not all of it, between the board and I, that I just knew I wasn't the right person for that CEO role. It was a YMCA that was finishing construction and was slated to open um, in the next, 6 to 8 months, and I knew that I had to make at the time what I felt like was the right decision, and still to this day do. That I needed to resign. I needed to step away. I needed to give them the opportunity to go out and hire the right person, a person that could work with that board, who could serve that community, and do it the right way, and probably someone with some CEO experience, because I was dealing with things that I wasn't prepped to deal with.
Hmm.
And so I learned very quickly that that goal overshadowed my personal inability to do the role.
Hmm.
And so, leaving, which, let's talk personally. What I did is I moved my family from Houston, Texas, to a small town in Virginia in the mountains. We knew no one. We had given up, you know, two incomes in Houston, gone to one in Virginia, and now I was giving that one up as well. And at the time, we had a small baby, 6 to 7 months old, and a 4-year-old child. And so it was a decision that my wife and I took very seriously, but I knew it was a decision that had to be made. No matter what it meant for us personally, I knew it was the right thing for that organization, which was the right thing for the movement as a whole on the national level. And it was tough leaving that. I spent 6 months really trying to redefine myself. Am I still a Y career employee? Am I going to get a job outside of the Y? Is someone going to give me an opportunity now because I've gone to a position for 8 months and moved, walked away from it? And so it was a time where I really had to figure out what my next steps were. And so it wasn't easy. My wife luckily got a job in North Carolina, and we moved there. And I said earlier I'd never stepped away, and that was not exactly true. I did for 8 to 9 months. I was a stay-at-home dad trying to figure out what I was going to do and how to make ends meet while my wife was working as a sole income.
And what year was that, Jody?
That was 2008.
Oh, you mean the same year as the Great Depression?
Absolutely. And so, interesting sidebar story is exactly so. So, here we were living in the Raleigh, the Triangle area of North Carolina at the time. That's where my wife was able to land employment.
Nice area.
And I was going to job fairs for non-Y jobs, other businesses and for-profits. And here I am with my X number of years with a nonprofit, trying to land sales or business types of jobs, and I've got guys surrounding me who have 30 years of experience, and they just happen to be let go because their company folded or their company downsized. And it was the absolute worst time to make the decision, but it was absolutely the right decision to make.
Boy, that is saying a whole lot, especially when one takes into account, yeah, we just went through that time period where, I mean, long-standing institutions were on the verge of collapse in General Motors, and banking institutions did actually collapse, many of them. And there you were, still standing by what you felt this is the right thing to do because it's in your gut and in your heart, it's the right thing to do. Economically and time-wise, clearly there would be better times to do that. But nonetheless, you soldiered through. So you managed to get through that, obviously. You go back, your wife gets a job in the Triangle area there in Raleigh-Durham area, I guess, right?
That's correct.
In North Carolina. So North Carolina is kind of home, sounds like, for both of you. So that makes a lot of sense. But you're not in North Carolina.
I'm not. I am a journeyman for sure. I'm hoping that that's over for now, at least for a stretch of time. So, after about 6 months, I realized that, man, I just really missed the why. I knew that was the why was part of my internal fabric, and I had to figure out a way to get back into the why. And it was a phone call with Gigi Woodruff, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Whom I have relied on so much and still continue to rely on so much for coaching and mentoring through decisions and situations. There was a conversation with her when that finally got me back on the horse, kind of. It was, well, you need to start applying for Y jobs. If you think it's part of who you are, then you're not going to get a job if you're not applying for Y jobs. And so, as simple as that was, I hadn't, because I knew at some point I'd have to tell that story. And at that time, it was an embarrassment for me. I was a failure. I wasn't able to cut it as a CEO. And it was that conversation with her when I, finally kind of woke up and realized that it wasn't about that soul experience. It was about that being a part of my story with the why. Mm-hmm. So it was that conversation, and that led to a conversation with someone else at YUSA who told me, you just got to put the story out front and center. and make it, just put it out there, let people know what happened, and then go into detail if they ask, and if they don't, then move on beyond it. And that's exactly what I did. So over the next 2 months, 2 to 3 months, I was on the interview trail, literally going, on phone calls with Hawaii and Maine, going to Tennessee, going to Florida, coming here to Maryland actually to interview at that time, and was lucky enough and I'm still grateful that I had three very good opportunities come around at the same time, and I had a choice. Again, we none of them were in North Carolina, unfortunately. So it was, were we moving to Columbia, South Carolina, or are we moving to Florida, or are we going to move to Maryland? And at the time, the best decision for the family was to move to Columbia, which we did. And spent 3 years in South Carolina, knowing that eventually there would be another opportunity here with the YMCA of the Chesapeake that would come around, and it did 3 years later. And so now here we are. We've been here for 2 years, and it was a roundabout way to get here, but I'm definitely in the right spot right now. And I have promised our oldest daughter that we won't move her for the foreseeable future, because she's going into middle school this fall. So I would hate to move her at such a crucial point in her life.
That's a big promise, Dad. Yeah. So when you were in South Carolina, when you were in Columbia, that's a beautiful facility there. The original downtown facility, just gorgeous. Yeah. They don't build them like, I'm hoping it's still there, right?
It is. Yes, it is.
It's so beautiful. I remember meeting the CEO there, and I said, "Wow, this is really impressive." I mean, it's deep south and kind of vintage. I don't know exactly when it was built, but sort of it's all that vintage woodwork and brickwork and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, to your role, you said if I caught this, I'm taking notes here. You were district executive there, or
Yeah, actually, I went in as the executive director of their camp facility.
Okay.
Which is in Lexington, South Carolina, which is a small suburb on the western edge of Columbia. So it's 165 acres of property.
Wow.
We had a small wellness center facility in the main lodge on camp. But really, programs were our bread and butter, and it was equestrian programs like horseback lessons, riding lessons, things of that nature. But we also did a pretty significant sized day camp and after school, and a few other things in the community.
So it was year-round camp?
No, it wasn't. It was just
summertime.
Main stuff in the summer, and then after school and teen programs in the school year.
Gotcha.
And so, did that for a few months, and then had the opportunity to take leadership of a family facility in Irmo, which wasn't very far from Lexington. So then I moved into that district role where I was overseeing two very different facilities. One being a camp with lots of property, and one being your traditional family-style branch of the Y. But it was a great experience for me to be able to manage multiple places. And so it was something new for me again. And I think you've probably learned that anytime I get the opportunity to learn something new, I usually grab onto it. So I did there as well. And then, in the next year or so after that, I was able to take over leadership of program development for the entire association, and oversee the marketing director and all the marketing efforts of the association as well. And so I was able to really kind of fold into some association responsibilities, which was, again, unique and new to me for the most part. And so it was pretty interesting. And that 3 years was really good for me to get my feet back. It was good for me to redefine myself as a YMCA professional,
Yeah.
And to be able to reconnect with the organization that I was only gone away from it for 8 months or so, but it felt like an eternity. It was good timing for me to get back in there and really, really grab back onto the organization and get back into the movement itself.
So I want to go back just a little bit and one of the lessons learned, I guess, that before we continue on with the next journey, because you're still not in Colombia, so we got at least one more leg of this trip to do.
Right. That's
But
right.
one of the things that I jotted down when you went to the little non-facility Y that was going to be a startup and get chartered and all that, is that and again, you know this and I know this, but this is for the people coming up in the ranks, and it's obvious now that you're looking back at this and saying, oh, that's one of the things that I didn't do that I should have done,
Right.
is that when you're the chief executive officer of the YMCA, and so when you're in your 20s or whatever, and you set this standard for you to be CEO, you think kind of maybe a little bit in the back of your mind, sort of that like you're the big boss, which you are, of course. But who does the CEO in every YMCA, who does the CEO report to?
Absolutely. The board of directors.
And those board of directors are paid or volunteers?
They should be paid, but they're not. Absolutely.
Boy, that's a very politically correct answer.
Right.
Good one on you. So your chief volunteer officer, or the CVO, again, we can banter these acronyms back and forth around, but for young people listening to this, that's your boss as a CEO.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so roll back this YouTube tape about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and listen to what Jody was saying when he was the CEO there, and he kind of just wasn't paying attention to basically one of those volunteers had to be your boss.
That's right. Absolutely.
And you were basically telling him, I'm the Y guy. I know what I'm doing. Maybe I'll nod my head and placate you with what platitudes, but basically I know what I'm doing. And as you discovered, in a not possibly a worse time in the last 80 years, economically at least, what you discovered is, whoops, not only maybe were there some things that you weren't ready for, but more importantly, boy, you did not get off to a good start with those volunteers.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think we did the board and I did a good job of having fiduciary conversations, so we knew exactly where we were with the capital campaign. We knew how many units we had sold of membership, and that part of it was fine. We did a decent job with strategy conversations of how are we serving the community, but a lot of that were things that I had already figured out, and so I guided that board in some instances to a decision. But we were really poor with generative discussions of how is that why going to truly impact the community, and how are we going to redefine our underlying values. And I can certainly, in hindsight being what it is, was able to look back and really just kind of shake my head at myself and realize where I went wrong and made some mistakes. And like I said, outside of that, I may not have been the right person anyway, but I certainly didn't do myself any favors.
Right. Well, and the good thing here that, again, for people, if, I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but I think you're probably a little bit of a sports fan. And I use this sports analogy is that you look at coaches, you look at NBA coaches, you look at baseball coaches, you look at football, professional NFL football coaches, and, they're fired. And you go, oh, they fired that coach. Well, they fired the coach because it wasn't a good fit. And in that business, they determine a good fit on a couple of things. One is wins and losses, which is kind of objective. It's very easy metric to look at. But the other one is also, revenue and team building and all those kinds of things. But sure enough, you open up the next day's paper, digitally or in real paper format, and you see, oh, he got hired over here. So It's not that person is a bad coach. That person has talent oozing all out, but it's about finding the right fit. It's about a fit.
Absolutely.
So that's what your story says in terms of getting back on the horse in South Carolina, getting your feet solidly planted again underneath you, and looking for that fit. You discovered that one little upstart Y in that particular moment, time wise, and maybe in the context of that Y, just wasn't a good fit. And kudos to you to voluntarily, resign with a family that you just moved up there.
Sure.
And that's a big decision. But I just wanted to underscore that learning there, and look at what happened. You didn't give up. You didn't fall out. You're back at it, and now you're two steps beyond
That's right.
that spot, or three steps beyond if you consider the gap that you
Right.
had there. But the gap was also a time for you to do a little soul searching, I would imagine.
It's absolutely what I did, and it was an interesting time, just for me personally, of learning who I was again, and that's where I made a promise to myself that my career was never again going to be about personal goals,
Hmm.
and I allowed them to get in my way. And so it truly is, my career is, and I've committed myself that my career now is just about serving the organization, and it's helping to strengthen the movement nationally. And however I can play that role, that's what I'll do. And it isn't about, I turned 40 this year, so I probably would have had a 40-year-old goal. I don't know what that would have been, but I don't anymore. It isn't about that, and I've committed myself to that. And it's just about, for me, it's about sharing my story with young staff and hoping that they hear me and that they understand that what you just said. It's about finding the best fit for you and not just the fit. It's not just something that fits into your personal goals. It's something that is going to serve you well and that you're going to serve that role well.
Exactly. So let's continue on now. So you're all settled in the Columbia, South Carolina area, and you're probably feeling pretty good about getting back on your feet. And now, lo and behold, I don't know, but I'm guessing maybe there was only one more move to where you are right now.
That's right, absolutely. And so, the opportunity to come to the YMCA of the Chesapeake as the development officer came around, and like I said before, I knew it was going to, some position or some opportunity here was going to come back around. It was just a matter of when. So the development officer came around, and when the CEO here, his name is Robbie, when he first pitched it to me, I just kind of laughed at him and said, we're friends, we know each other. I'm not a development officer. And when he said, well, let me tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who can engage people in conversation, someone who can tell the YMCA story, someone who has a very personal story themselves, and someone who can just share the overall mission of what we're trying to accomplish in the area. And he said, when I think of those criteria for this role, I can't think of anyone better than you to do it.
Wow.
And so I started, obviously I was extremely flattered, but I started thinking about what that meant for me. And, I've always enjoyed the development side of my role, whichever role I was in, because it is about engaging people. It's about building relationships, and it's about having a deeper, more meaningful conversation with someone about the organization. And so I felt like, it's something I definitely have enjoyed, and sure, I'll sink my teeth into it 100% of my time for the most part, and give it a go. And we've made great strides in development in our annual campaign and capital development here in the 2 years that I've been here, and we're building off of an incredible history of giving
Hmm.
in this area. So I at least had that bit of a springboard to jump off of. But it's been fun. But it's been different. It's, where are all the knocks on my door from members who want to complain or who want to talk about something in the facility? No, not that many knocks of, staff coming because they have something they need to talk about. It was very solitary to begin with, and so it was a mental transition for me personally to get out of the operations side of things and into being, in the community, dealing primarily with volunteers and donors and people who we want to be future donors. And so it was a shift, but it's been a good one.
So you talked about, yeah, that's huge. I mean, because I was just going to mention it, and you already said it. Your operations is everything from the toilet doesn't work right to the shower head doesn't work, to we're out of towels, to to somebody's concussion training for staff to make sure that they're also. I mean, operations is hands-on and time sensitive all the time, and it's nonstop, almost even outside of the normal hours of operation, even of a facility. Why? And now you're into the volunteer side of things, which is hugely different, but it's certainly a lot more opportunity to tell to target a different audience, perhaps with the same story.
That's right.
But I would also think that development of all things is really more about relationships. And I tend to think of, I'm a technician by heart, you know me, but I tend to think of development as people got to have deep relationships. And yet with 2 years there, and obviously at the beginning, when you first got there, you had no time there and probably didn't know any of the volunteers, and yet you've still done, I think I heard you say, if I recall this correctly, you said you had 3 capital campaigns either going now or getting ready to start. You have an endowment, and you mentioned something, if I heard correctly, you mentioned something about 7 annual support campaigns or strong kids campaigns, whatever you call them there. Well, that's huge. So how do you, as a new person, dropped into this? You're an operations specialist. You got 16 years of operations experience behind you, and a lot of deep experience. You dropped into this to tell stories,
Yep.
with no relationships with anybody, that you've got to go out and what I call grin and grip, right? You've got to go out there and shake hands with people. How did you get started? And that would be petrifying, I think, to many people.
It could be, for sure. I've always been the type of person, Jeff, that you tell me what it is that needs to be accomplished, and like you hit the nail on the head. It's all about relationships. It's about deep, meaningful relationships with people. So my first 90 days really was a bunch of conversations. It was a lot of multiple conversations with the right people that introduced me to other people, and it was about being genuine with them and being transparent and sharing who I was as a person and sharing my why story, and talking to them about their why story. Why are you connected to the organization? What's your passion? So it was a lot of talking. It was a lot of asking questions, the right questions, and it was just a lot of sharing. For right off the bat, I just hit the ground running, and I'd say I've just been lucky that maybe it's part of my personality that makes people feel comfortable. So I've been able to really build those relationships with people in a short amount of time.
Because you're asking people for money.
Yeah. Well, my theory is if you build a relationship the right way, you never have to actually ask for money. It'll just be there when you share a need with someone, with the right person. And that's what it's all about. It's connecting people and their passions with something that we're doing at the Y, and then helping them understand how they can help us fund it with their money or their talents or whatever the needs are. If it's volunteer support with hands-on hours or whatever the need is, that's solely what it's about. So being able to just share with people and show people the need and put their eyes on it. You never actually have to ask for money often. It's usually just there when you need it. And here, like I said, we have a really amazing historical group of donors who continue to just pour out their hearts and their wallets when we need them. And we're just very blessed to be in a situation like we are. And so that probably led, it's probably a little bit easier for me, given the personality I am, just to engage those people in conversations. So it's been good, 2 years, and I would say I have, very good friends in this area that are also donors of Y, and my wife and I both feel very entrenched in the community and the people who are here.
Well, that is an interesting part. I spent a few years in Baltimore myself, so I know a little bit of the, although I guess that would be considered kind of the big city, but it's there's some long, deep family roots back in that part of the country. Not that there isn't in North Carolina and South Carolina, but
Sure.
there is just especially tight-knit families that are living in their grandparents' house because it's been passed along from generation to generation. So that's an amazing part of the country. And again, I don't think it's just luck. That obviously it has something to do with your personality, because when you come into that, you could be either looked at as an outsider.
Sure.
And if you had walked in, maybe here's an angle. If you had walked in with the same angle in Easton and the same attitude that you walked into in that, what was the name of that town?
Tazewell,
yeah. Virginia. Do you think I'd be talking to you today in Easton, or you'd be somewhere else?
I wouldn't have lasted very long. I wouldn't have had very good luck, for sure. So luckily, I was smart enough to learn from that situation and do things a lot differently, both in Columbia and here.
Well, because I want to draw these are bookends that we're talking about here. One is a bookend where you basically just thumbed your nose at the volunteers, and the other is a bookend that you're spending all your time, virtually all your time, is with not even policy volunteers, some obviously policy volunteers, but some just community volunteers in terms of donors and prospects.
That's right.
That's a 180-degree turnaround.
Absolutely.
And so that's important to know. I like to look at those kinds of things, again, in hindsight, but it's for people that say, hey, look, well, Jody was a flop with volunteers. No, no. That was just one instance that wasn't a good fit, and now you've gone full circle. And
that's right.
And I think you've got one other leg of that. You said something about 17 days or something like that. You're moving on. You're getting back into operations?
That's right. Well, the 1st of July, I actually moved into the Chief Operating Officer role for our organization here in Maryland. And so I'm extremely excited about having leadership over the executives and being able to coach them through decisions and situations, and how what are their development needs. And those are really things that I thrive in. I enjoy being in those types of conversations, and I've missed that significantly over the last 2 years. And so I'm ready to jump back into it, and it gives me the ability to pick those 10,000 hours back up and put them back in my pocket and move forward with them and continue to build on them as we continue to grow and expand here on the Eastern Shore.
Well, Jody, you've shared a lot of your journey through the Y, and this is going to be one of those great listens and viewings. If people, when they go back to visit this in YouTube, they're going to be able to see. It's like, no, having a Y job is sort of predictable. Well, this has been anything but predictable.
Absolutely.
And so, as you're looking back over those, all of those scenarios now, if there's a couple of things, and I think you've mentioned them in here, but I just want you to highlight them. What are a couple of what you would call, those are moments that you were just really proud of, that you've left, in a good sense of the word pride, in that you've left a sort of a positive Jody Jernigan legacy in some of those previous stopping points. And it doesn't need to be even at the executive level necessarily. There could be some, if you go way back, think of some maybe legacy learning opportunity or coaching or mentoring opportunity that you provided. Just a couple of those, if you can dig back.
Sure, absolutely. A couple of them stand out immediately. And it really was back when I left my first full-time job and went back to Wilmington, and over that summer of 2001, kind of recreated and led the Leaders in Training program. And so, those are 13 to 15-year-olds who aren't really campers. They're not old enough to be counselors. And so what do you do with them? And so it was a program that I kind of redesigned and said, okay, well, we're going to really turn this upside down a bit, and we're going to have them do some community service. And it was really kind of at that point in time where that program was changing or shifting or molding itself nationwide into something new. And so we had a group of 10 to 13. We narrowed it down. We did interviews of kids, and really it was on an acceptance basis. It wasn't just you sign up and pay, you were part of it. So we really made it something that you had to work a little bit to get into. And I can think of that summer, there were several of those teams that stayed with us all 10 or 11 weeks of the summer. And just recently, actually, I had one of those same kids. It's been within the last, 6 to 8 months, reach out to me and say, I just really want to thank you for that summer because it meant so much to me. And that was, now 13 years ago.
Wow.
This kid is, now a college graduate and has moved on into the working world themselves. And so that's just one kind of moment that I can think of back at that point. And the second one would be actually from Houston. The Thelma Leigh Anderson YMCA was the YMCA that I was leading at the time of construction and opening. And every year on January the 20th, which is the day that branch opened, every year I get an email message from the, at that point, board chair. Her name is Pam, and she still emails me every January 20th and just, thanks me for that process and that opening, and, that community at that point in time was just really special and still is.
Wow. So you've just touched on a couple of things there that say that you're making an impact in people's lives. 13 years ago, 7 years ago, roughly 7, 8 years ago, whenever that opened. I forget exactly when, but these are things that you're just doing in passing. It's a 10, 11-week program for this leader in training program, and the kids go through, and it's not that you don't care about them, but you kind of don't expect really that they're going to hang on to that. It's like you kind of wonder, it's like, did I really make a difference or not? And here it is 13 years later, and you hear that back. So that has to be, that's something that doesn't come in part of the paycheck. That's the extra pay that we get, right?
Right.
That's just invaluable.
Absolutely.
Those are two great. Those are just amazing. And a volunteer that the former board chair that emails you that's obviously a memorable day for her.
Absolutely so, and it's a memorable day for myself and all the staff who were with me at that point in time, and other volunteers as well. And it was January 20th of 2007, and so just like you said, just over 7 years ago. But it was a very special opportunity, and I will cherish that point in time as long as I live, because it was a unique opportunity in a great community that deserved a full facility and deserved everything that it could offer. And I was just, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you keep mentioning luck. And that's probably some of your modesty shining through here, because I think, yeah, okay, maybe some of it is, we can't control all of the timing and all of the circumstances, but there's, the message that I want to make sure that people hear here also is that there's a lot of dedication and talent behind that as well. So it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of lady luck on your side, but you're not going to get there if you're not dedicated and if you're not tenacious and persistent and,
Sure.
and professional about everything as you go through. So we're getting right around to the 60-minute live time here. So what I want to do now is take a boy. We've gotten a whole look at the professional side of Jody Jernigan here, and now let's take a dip into a little bit of your personal side, something that you would like to share with the people, and I think especially the younger people that would be meaningful from your life that you haven't touched on. Maybe even something, sort of some lessons pre YMCA in your family background and your upbringing or something like that. But I'll let you pick. The barrel is wide open here. So
That is wide open, Jeff. That's I just putting whatever's out there is out there. I would say that I was raised in the South, so I was raised with an expectation of being a gentleman and being, having that Southern charm that goes along with growing up in a North Carolina town, a small one at that. But it also taught me that no matter what, and yeah, it probably is I'm just being gracious, I guess. But there, like you said, it does take some tenacity. I was also taught that you can be a gentleman, but you also have to be aggressive in what you want, and you also have to be aggressive in what you're held accountable and responsible to. And it's about always taking those things, rolling them into who you are as a person, and then pushing forward and going above and beyond what's asked of you to get whatever task it is that needs to be done. And so, like you said, with the why, it's very easy for us, those of us who are my age and in my generation, to care about the why. We understand there's the intangible side of the why that isn't on the paycheck. It isn't in the benefits package, but it's there and it's palpable. And it's important to remember that we as an organization have the greatest opportunity to impact the greatest number of people on any given day. And we have to continue to grab onto that, and we have to build our staff teams with people who understand and get it. And it's about hiring the right people, like you said, and putting them in the right places. And it's not just filling voids in the human resources world. And so it's just taking everything that I've, everything my parents taught me, my grandparents, and how lucky I was to have that kind of normalcy growing up in the family structure. And then understanding in today's society that's very rare. But there's still lessons to be learned from that, and there are lessons that I can share with young staff and volunteers and young kids and families and individuals who are a part of who we are as an organization. And it's just something that I really love doing. And at this point, I can't think of doing anything else in the world. Absolutely not. And, I'm just, I'm grateful that I've continued to land in good spots and provide what I can to the organization at that moment and strengthen the movement as a whole.
That's awesome. So let me ask just a couple of other things here as we wrap this up. So you are in this context. You absolutely. It's okay to say that you are one of the luckiest guys on the planet, because I know that you are constantly surrounded by three lovely ladies. Are you not?
Absolutely. I am.
So do you have it? Do they have any things that like Was there a time in your daughter's lives where they wanted you to get a puppy or a kitten or a cat or a hamster or some kind of pet thing there, or how'd you deal with that?
Yeah, actually, we have all of those. We have two dogs, two cats, and two hamsters. Um, yeah, it's a little bit of a zoo at the house, and so my wife and I have always said that we'll try to provide our children with whatever opportunities we have the ability to give them. And for us, we grew up with pets, and so it was important for us to have children who grew up with pets, and it teaches them responsibility, and it teaches them how to care for another life, and I think it gives them a much deeper meaning of who they are and a much deeper meaning of what it means to be alive.
So,
And
so,
so
so
it's
which pet is whose favorite? Which pet is whose favorite?
oh, uh, that's a tough call. We just got a dog, a Shih Tzu recently. Her name is Holly, that we saved, and I would say she's probably everyone's favorite because she's the newest and she's the smallest and she's the cutest. But we also have an older dog who's around 11 or 12 now, and she's just kind of our special pet that my wife and I have had for a very, very long time. And the dogs are definitely on the top of the favorites list
Uh-huh.
amongst everybody.
Well, that's great. See, those are the little things. I just pulled hamster out of the blue, and lo and behold, uh,
Yeah, we do. We have two of them, so they're interesting little critters for sure.
they're night
They're
animals, right? Nocturnal.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That little squeaky wheel. Um,
that's why both of them are in our laundry room. We have a very large laundry room, so we're lucky that we have some shelving to put them on. They can run their little hearts out. They won't bother anyone.
Well, Jody, this has been really a fun conversation for me. You have made this very easy, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I just want to thank you for having the courage to sit down with me and taking the time and having the interest to just share your story. And I know that there are going to be lots of people just like that youth from 13 years ago. There are going to be lots of people that are going to listen to this and listen to your story and realize, wow, it might not be necessarily a straight path, and there may be some rough bumps along the way, but you can still come out on top, and you've still got a good, I'd say you said you're going to hit 40, so you still got at least another 20 years.
Uh,
Uh, you know,
God
at,
willing, I do.
yeah, exactly. So we're going to wrap this up now. Again, Jody, thank you very much. And you can find this live. They'll be the live version will be up in just a few minutes. It'll be on YouTube at the yamplify.tv. That's the letter Y, amplify.tv. You can find that by just going to YouTube/YAmplify TV. And that will be the unedited version. The edited version will pop up tomorrow. It will be lightly edited. We didn't say anything that we can't share with the world, but this is triangulation, cause-driven conversations. And if you didn't think this conversation was cause-driven, then I would suggest maybe there's a redefinition of cause-driven in your future, because Jody is living the cause here, as you have heard over the past 60 or so minutes. So I'm going to end this now. Thank you, and I'll stop the stream. But Jody, you